attending the afternoon workshops. This is a legal roundtable, opportunities and obstacles for resolving abductions. And I'd like to introduce our moderator, who will then introduce the panelists and conduct this conversation. I'm happy to introduce Jeffrey Morehouse as our moderator. Jeffrey is the executive director and co-founder of Back Home, an organization that seeks to reunite and return children who have been abducted to Japan. He is also my coalition partner in the Coalition to End International Parental Child Abduction. Jeffrey is also, I'll never get tired of saying it, my cause mentor, having patterned the way that I approach this issue in large part through how I saw him model it. So thank you, Jeffrey, and welcome.
So thank you everyone for joining in the attorney roundtable. I just want to clarify, I've been often mistaken for an attorney. I am not an attorney. I'm going to hopefully do very little talking after I introduce these gentlemen and really just serve to keep the conversation going. So first, to my left, you've already met him earlier, Mohammed Al-Ayubi from iHope. In Lebanon. Our friend Carlos Alvarado from Mexico, who I met, when did we meet? 2015, I think we met.
The first one, 2014.
2014,
That was the first one, yeah.
And so you're a private practice attorney in Mexico. What I know of you is you've always fought on the right side of this issue, being representing parents of kidnapped children. So very rare in the field, but he's always been deeply connected to this issue at heart. And lastly, we're pleased to have Mr. Rami Zar, who some of you may have known when he was at National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Rami, I'm so fortunate, he was my first case officer that I talked to in, I think before the kidnapping actually, as a prevention case, because I was concerned. Rami, a few years ago, decided he wanted to get into the legal profession. Unbeknownst to us, he dedicated himself, became an attorney. Now he's in practice in the area and continues to stay very deeply connected to working on this cause. And so with that, I'm just going to kind of turn it over to Carlos. Why don't you start first, if you would, and take us through your presentation.
Thank you.
Hola.
Hola.
Okay. I promised last night to someone that I want to start with my own story. Back in 1975, my mom moved my brother and myself to the States, in Chicago. It was a verbal agreement from my mom and my dad, 1 year staying in Chicago. After the year, my dad started moving around Chicago, apartment, house. And we were wondering what's going on. Dad said, nothing. We just need to move a better house or a better apartment. Okay, but we haven't talked to mommy for a long time. Oh, she's fine. She knows where you are. Okay. 1976, I would say maybe summer 1976, because the agreement is we should return early 1976. 1976, summer, I was watching TV. This kind of road sport that you have, rolling sport, kind of. I was so excited. I was 7 at the time. When everything started, I was 6. I was 7 at the time. Then my brother came to me and said, "We need one more player." I said, "I don't want to play. I'm watching TV." Really, we need one more player. I said, and really, I don't want to play. I want to watch TV. And then he whispered at me and said, "Don't say anything. Mommy is downstairs." So I was like, So I watched through the window, and I saw my mom, and she was like, So obviously, I ran downstairs. I want to give her a big hug, but I couldn't. She just took myself, and get me to the car, get my brother to the car, ring the bell, and my dad was like, "What's going on, Blanca?" That's her name. So I'm taking my kids, the one you tried to steal from me. So I remember very clear that night because that was the last night I saw my dad. Since then, I don't have a dad. And you know that? I do. I think that I thought I do. So it's very unfair for mom, for dad, but especially for the kids. That mom and dad involve, fights or discussion or difference. And basically abduct their own children. So again, since 1976, I don't have a dad. We have this discussion with my mom over the years. And her answer was always, he knows where you are. So he could reach you out at any time. I said, well, I think you have a little bit of responsibility by saying you want to talk to your dad. So I can put your phone and talk to your dad or something. But she didn't. So it's been a long time. I'm 53 already. So that story is, it's one of the saddest story about my life. But I think, thanks to that story, but I think that thanks to my own personal story, I'm so committed to these cases. So I've been practicing these cases since 2000 while I was working at the Mexican consulate in Seattle. We've been handling a lot of these cases, a lot. And obviously our focus is the child. There is a lot. That's fine.
आजा भाई राजा इधर आ तू
It's fine. So you didn't know?
I didn't know that. We never talked today. But that kind of explains your passion.
I think so.
Yeah.
You tell me.
La la la.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Better?
Much better.
Okay.
I was trying to go.
Should I repeat my story or
No.
pass
No,
it?
no, no.
Okay.
Pull it back just a little bit.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Okay. Well. Yeah, we've been doing these cases for 21 years, since 2000. I was working at the consulate at the time when I got my first case. And it was a success story from the States to Mexico. So the first case that we handled was taking a couple of boys from the States returning to Mexico. And then the second one was the same.
अनय
2 boys from the
इधर आ
States
यार
to Mexico. Okay?
I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine.
Control the sound.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, thank you. Well, I prepare basic, opportunities and obstacles about the resolving an abduction. There are so many issues. I will say it's a challenge that you face when you get involved in a case, a restitution case. I would say number one, the very, very first thing that you're gonna feel as a left behind parent, it's emotions. It's the shock. It's like, now what? Where are my kids? What should I do? You get angry. You want revenge. It's several emotions that involve the first step to realize that your children are out of the country in another country. Takes time. I know it takes time. I was discussing with Mohammed last night that in our office, we are kind of those lawyers that put the shoulders to our client, The first emotion is, okay, come and cry, tell me the story, I'm here. I spent, Sujaydi is around, but I spent 6 hours talking to Sujaydi by the phone. She's around here. And the conclusion is like, Sujaydi, I'm sorry to hear this, I got a charge twice by cell phone, 6 hours talking to her. And then I say, you don't have a case. After 6 hours talking, I said, you don't have a restitution case. We can represent you, yes, but with a different strategy. But Yeah, that's the kind of lawyer that we are, Mohammed. So you should start doing that. You're gonna feel good. Okay. So passing the emotions, again, it's gonna be a series of emotions: angry, frustration. Then it comes to second one, which is family. After your emotions and you figure it out, you realize that your kids are out of the country, then you talk to family. And then it's a brainstorm. There's a lot of ideas, what to do, who should I contact, who is gonna support me, how I'm gonna handle this, which member of the family we should tell the real story at this moment, at the very beginning moment. And then we go to number 3, after family, resource. And I gotta say that I stand, it's huge, a big, and a beautiful resort. So I'm so proud about the movement, the family, because I attended the very first meeting 8 years ago. I was telling all, I think we were 10 or 12, and she's, yeah, close. We were 13 at the very first meeting. They've been building this family, and they are a very good resource. I know you've been talking about this Goldman Act, and by the time I was talking to you guys and say, I don't know how you are going to implement this in the real life. How you're going to find Mexico for not complying? Because Mexico used to be very bad country to comply with a Hague Convention. I think now we are doing better than in the last 10 years. But still, I think the Goldman has to be enforced to Mexico as well. So again, regarding resource, it's important that you get to the right people, to the right resource, because then you can get money, you can get more shoulders, you can get parents like some of you that, living this for years, and you can get to the right people. So like Noel, like Randy, Jeffrey, etc., etc. So be aware of that. So again, number 1 is emotion, then you go to family, and then you gotta find that resource that you needed to handle this case. And then we go to money. It costs a lot of money. And I'm not talking even about the legal fees, because we have to charge, not always we charge, we do some pro bono cases, but the cost to recover your kids is gonna be a big issue, because from the beginning, you gotta spend money. Jason is here. I think you spent already $2,000 on me just to travel to Guadalajara, handling some issues in Guadalajara, getting certified copies, and the bill is gonna increase, and sooner or later it's gonna be a lot more than my own legal fee. So you have to be ready to cover the cost. When clients ask me about that, I say, well, I cannot lie, You're gonna pay me this amount comparing with the money that you may spend in a case like this. I didn't know that another client from Michigan, I didn't know that, but I think he told you that he spent over $100,000 to recover both of their children. So yeah, so you have to be ready for cost. This is a real issue. And then we go to lawyers. Lawyers, you have to contact the right lawyer. It is very important that you hire a lawyer who knows, number 1, the system in the country that your child is retained. Number 2, that your lawyer knows how to handle the Hague Convention. And number 3, a lawyer who knows how to handle the local legal system. Like in the States, in Mexico, we have 32 different civil codes, processal codes. So right now I'm handling a case in Baja California, which is different than the case in Querétaro. It's a restitution case, but the processal code is totally different. Different from Jalisco, yeah, different from Baja California Sur, because we are going to handle a case in Los Cabos very soon. Different from Coahuila, etc., etc., etc. So it's very important that you contact the right lawyer. How you're going to know about how you can know to hire the right lawyer? I would say you just need to ask specific questions regarding the Hague Convention. And if he has the right answer, then you have the right lawyer. It's not move over, because I've been listening. I heard 4 lawyers, 7 lawyers, 11 lawyers, until I get to, in this case, Mohammed, or cases like me, like Jason. I don't know, you talk to 3 or 4 different lawyers.
In Mexico?
Yeah.
I talked to 6 lawyers, 6, 7.
Well, 6, I'm the 7,
Yeah,
but I'm the 1.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay, after lawyers, we go to central authorities. Early, Randall introduced me to our main guy from the central authority. And I will say this, in several cases, we don't use central authorities. We prepare the case ourselves. We took the papers. Obviously, the difference in those cases is using the central authority according with the Article 23 of the Hague Convention. You don't need to legalize, you don't need to apostille anything. But if you're not going to use the central authority, you have to legalize or you have to apostille the documents. But sometimes the bureaucracy between one and the other central authorities, it's a waste of time. So in many cases, we just decide to prepare the case ourselves and send it directly to court, because under Article 29 of the Hague Convention, you don't need to use central authority. You can go directly to court and submit that case. But that decision has to be made by your lawyer's team, because each case is different. Each story is different, so it's just the same. So that's what I say. Sometimes I don't like to work with central authorities because it's a lot of bureaucracy. And I was talking to this guy and I say, I'm gonna ask you one thing. What's his name, Randall?
His name was Noah.
No. Well, I talked to him and I say, can I ask you for a big favor? I say, yeah. Can you please, when you submit a case, at least to Mexico, can you make sure that they send enough evidence to prove habitual residence in the States? Because it's very important. And number 2, can you please also make sure that you can send documents to prove custody of the left behind parent? I was very disappointed because he answered, well, we send what the parents give it to us. I said, yeah, I know that. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, because then we go to court, and then in court we have big issues. Judges say, you don't prove habitual resident. It's pretty easy to prove habitual resident. It's pretty easy to prove custody, exercising a real custody. But his answer, I was very sad and disappointed. I said, well, that's the boss, and he's telling me that it's not their fault. They send whatever that mom and dad provide to them. They should supervise at least. They should review before sending to Mexican Central Authority. But again, that's why we don't always use central authorities. And then, as I was telling you guys early, local legal systems. I was sharing ideas with Mohammed last night, and I gotta say we have such a good time having some drinks and a lot of conversation, talking. And we got to the point that it's sadly, but in our countries, it's still some corruption. That's true. I told him I never have to buy or pay a judge to win a case. Never. And I'm pretty sure I will do that. In his country, things are different. In my country, some states are different. But I told my clients, you have to trust my team, you have to trust us, and you have to be ready and be patient. Why? Because if that judge wants money to resolve the case in our favor, I have options. I have appeal court, then I have federal court, and then I have Supreme Court. So right now we have a case at the Supreme Court. So we disagree with the judge. We went to federal court directly, and now the case is handled in Supreme Court. It's a case from Germany. So it's important that your lawyer explain the local legal system, how it's gonna handle. I was telling Jason, Jalisco doesn't have, the state of Jalisco in Mexico doesn't have a specific regulation on restitution cases like Guanajuato. I live in León, Guanajuato state, they have a specific regulation for these cases. In Mexico, only 10 states has a specific regulation for restitution case. Other than that, we have to use they call summary case, which is the spirit, cases, and the spirit means months. Then measures. This is, I think someone was talking about measures early this morning. We have 3 different times to call for a measures. Measures before we submit the case, measures during the case, and measures after the case. I was listening earlier to one of your students, Noel, and he was suggesting that it should be someone to prepare the kids when the restitution is granted, to talk to them and prepare to move to the States. I'm sorry, I disagree with that. Once you get the kids, you have to send the kids right away, same day. We always do this. It's no time to waste. Why? Because in Mexico there is a legal resource, federal legal resource called amparo. Amparo, yeah, it's a legal resource. You go to federal court, and while they decide, you have to hold the case, you have to hold the kids. Jason is here, and we don't even submit the restitution case yet, and he has 6 different open files. Among those 6, he has 2 amparos that now we have to fight. Why? Because corruption, somehow she got information, private and confidential information, and she submit 2 different amparos. So, measures before the case, we have to secure the kids. Once you find the kids, you have to secure the kids. Why? What I say, or what I'm trying to say by secure the kids, it's normally in Mexico, a judge say, okay, I will put the kid in like a foster home while the case is handling. We don't like that, and I've been talking a lot to judges, say, just legally secure the kid. What does that mean? Tell the other parents, the retainer or the subtractor, not to remove the kid from your jurisdiction, not to remove the kid from this house, and ask him to come to court and sign every week. Send someone from court to that house to make sure that the kid is still living there. Randall it. It's like maybe twice a week. So there is so many things to do before submit the case. During the case, make sure that the measures are complying by the court. All these measures. After the case, as I say, you have to be ready. Like in some cases, I have to push the central authority to issue passport. Again, once I have the kids, when we recover the kids, passport must be ready to travel either with a lawyer, either with a dad or mom, or whoever dad or mom decide to travel those kids. So it has to be paperwork ready to travel, okay? Criminal charge. You guys do criminal charge, please. Do it. It's a tool for us. It's a big resource. I can decide if I'm gonna use it or not. But criminal charge for lawyers is very important. It's a strategy. Obviously, I don't want, in my case, I don't want mom or dad to be on jail. That's my opinion, professional opinion. But by you submitting criminal charge, it's very important. Why? Because sometimes, I was telling Noel, they prepared me a case like 3 or 4 years ago, and she was like, how come that case was resolved so quick? Because we submit criminal charge, number one, and we ask FBI to get involved. So basically, in Mexico City, FBI helped me to recover those kids. So that's what I say. File criminal charge always, and then let your lawyer decide if he's going to use it or not. Because sooner or later, you can just drop those charges. It's pretty easy to do that. And finally, execution of the resolution. I start a case from, I think it started in Houston, Texas, to 2013. It took me 5 years to win the case. I got a final resolution, 2018. I have a beautiful resolution. I have a beautiful sentence saying those 3 children must return to the state right away. I cannot execute that resolution. Why? Because I cannot find the kids. They are moving around Mexico. We were so close, Saltillo, then Mexico City, and then Puebla. And even we have our resource, you know, like I was telling some people last night that we use satellite, you know, and is the people is talking through the cell phone, I can get to them very quick. But when you keep changing your cell phone and over, this is not legal, by the way, okay? Because we are using satellite to get to that cell phone. But we have to do what we have to do on behalf of you guys. So yeah, so it's another thing. The execution of the resolution sometimes is not easy, because once you win the case, finally win the case, now you have to find the kids and recover the kids. And that's another money issue, time issue, frustration a lot of times. Final step, basically. So I resume basically our law exercise or practice basically in these 10 points. You know, there is several more, but I don't want to get you bored. So I think this is part of the most important when you litigate these cases. So I want to handle the microphone to my friend and brother now, who made me cry a few minutes ago, Mohammed. And then I think we are going to have, okay.
Hello everyone. I want to speak legal techniques. It was a very good presentation, Brother Carlitos. Let us speak about obstacles. What we have obstacles in the Middle East, and especially the Arabic countries. I will mention 3 obstacles. And from these things, we might make a think tank later to proceed something, to pursue something, to help in this issue. The first thing, as you know, internationally, we had the Hague Convention. A Hague Convention means nothing in the Arabic countries. Nothing, totally nothing. The Arabic countries refer to a religious law and regulation with everything concerning the family laws. Custody, divorce, marriage, everything is religious there. So this is our first problem in the Arabic countries. So we don't have a civic law, and when you don't have a civic law, you will not honor or sign an international convention. And for the thing become most complicated when you will reach or when you will find that one country had several regulations, several conflict regulation. I will give you an example. In Lebanon, for the Christian, they had regulation, a law. For the Muslim Sunni, they had a law. For the Shia, they had a law. If you want to take an example, the custody. the custody for women in Lebanon, if the husband is Shi'i, the maximum age for custody is 2 years. If it's a Christian, the maximum is 7 years. Other Christian sects, 15 years. Is Muslim Sunni, 12 years. Just, we are talking about one single country. So this is our first problem. How we can resolve the abduction, the international abduction matters in this field, when you just know that you have a civil regulation concerning this. What we try to do is to refer to some Lebanese regulation concerning the civil law in a global. For example, we have a code, a law in Lebanon. It's called Civil Procedures Law. We have 2 articles, 2013 and 2014. These 2 articles mention how you can implement or recognize a foreign verdict. They didn't talk about families' right, no, just a foreign verdict. If I want to give an example, if I have a commercial thing between me and Michelle, and I owe her like $1 million, she can, if he took an American verdict, she can implement this American verdict in Lebanon. But nothing is mentioned about the families. What we exactly have done in Lebanon, that we refer to these 2 articles, and they have some condition. So we try to adopt the family, the foreign verdict, adopted as these 2 articles to implement. Our first obstacle is when they will object, they will refer exactly to the religious law. So we will start the same dilemma. And Michelle, Rachel, and even Rola, always we start with to give an execution power to the foreign verdict. The first, second, they object, they will refer to the religious law, and they will say to the judge, no, judge, please, you can't continue in this. It's a religious matter. It's under the sects, not under the law, the civic law. And for that, we will enter a very big dilemma. So this is our first problem. There is a big gap between the international and the local laws in the Arabic countries, because what I mentioned before. The second obstacle, sorry for this, I'm talking globally. I'm not using any methodology, but I'm trying to make remarks about this, and we are talking like a global. The second big obstacle is the following. There is no penal charges about abduction in Lebanon. Lebanon don't recognize the parental abduction as a crime. So, if you had a conflict between you and your husband in Lebanon, he might took the children for 3 years, and you can't refer to a penal. Okay, you can go to the Sharia court, the religious court. You can implement some things. Okay, but it's not a crime. You can believe that if someone abduct her child or his child, no one will tell him what you are doing. It's simply with no charges, and this is also a big obstacle. The third obstacle is that you can't generalize. I will give you an example. We go through the case of Michelle. Okay, we convince the judge that her religious marriage in America was being wrong, and the judge convinced. We can't use the same precedent in another case. No, you can't generalize. So we are lawyers and we know what the meaning of a precedent in the jurisprudence. It's a very big thing and you can rely on it. No, you can make it in Lebanon or in the Arabic countries because you can generalize. So if we win the case of Michel, could the same circumstances for Rola, but we will not succeed. We can't generalize. I just can't give you the right thing that if you can win or no, even if you have the same circumstances. And this is the second problem, third problem. What we are trying to do today as an opportunity, because we are gathering here for the obstacles and the opportunities. The opportunities now in Lebanon is the strategic litigation. You were all you were in the first panel when we went online, and you listened to Khalid Sabbagh, representative of IHO. Now we are trying to use a thing called strategic litigation. A strategic litigation is to find in every case something you can use it, but you can generalize. And also, we are going through this, and we are trying to make a very good performance in this. And maybe if we can win 7 or 8 similar cases, we can later make a bill for a law, and we can generalize. But now we can't. So this is in brief the situation in Lebanon and in all or in the most the Arabic countries, because they don't refer to as a civic law as you are here. If anyone has problem with her wife or his wife or her wife or his husband, they can go to the court, the county court here in America. There is no county court. There is a Sharia, a sheikh. Sheikh with something on his head, and he will rule concerning the religion, not the law. So this is our problem, and this is why trying to resolve by the I hope and by this international cooperation. Thank you very much.
Well, what I'll say is that every case is different when it comes to international parental child abduction. That's one thing to keep in mind. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you have a hate country, but it's not compliant. And other times you have a non-hate country that's willing to recognize a U.S. order and enforce it in that foreign country. Because every case is different, my experience, and I did work for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children until 2018 for over a decade, and I handled abduction cases, outgoing cases, and incoming cases. I think the most important thing is that you approach these cases knowing that it's going to be a joint effort. And it's so nice to see attorneys from other countries because the way the process works, say for example, a child is taken overseas, you can go to court here in the US, you can hire a lawyer, get an emergency order. You can call the State Department, Center for Missing and Exploited Children. At the end of the day, you also have to be working with a lawyer in the destination country. Whether it's Hague or non-Hague, I think it is essential and extremely important to work with a lawyer in that foreign country. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a joint effort. It takes time, and what I was telling Ms. Littleton earlier, that it is up to the parent really. And I admire the courage that you all have, because you are taking the lead. You're telling what people at NCMEC should do. You're telling what people at the State Department should be doing. You're working with lawyers overseas. You are in the driving seat when it comes to actually taking an order from the US and trying to register it. Whether you invoke the Hague Convention, if it is available as a civil mechanism in that country or not, but you're in charge. And it doesn't matter how long it's been. Never give up. keep trying, because an abduction case is extremely challenging. And if someone doesn't call you back, I'm guilty of not calling back people when I was at NICMAC, but things were so busy. Call them again. If the State Department doesn't call you back, call them again. If the FBI agent, local law enforcement don't call you back, call them again. This is your case. These are your children. And I think the lawyers and the caseworkers and law enforcement, they're there to support you. And ISTAN today kind of brings everyone together. I mean, you have lawyers from here, you have lawyers from other countries. So that's when it comes to abduction cases. I want to touch a little bit about prevention, because I know ISTAN does a lot of work when it comes to prevention. And as you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? If you know parents who have concerns about an international critical child abduction case, they have options, they have resources. They can go to court, they can obtain a non-removal order. They can enroll their children in certain programs to minimize the risk. The U.S. doesn't have exit control, but they can certainly minimize the risk today more than ever. And the nice thing is they have an organization like ISTAN that they can turn to and say, hey, what do you think I should do? Should I call the State Department? Should I enroll my child in the Children's Passport Issuance Alert Program? Should I call the FBI? And by the way, 18 U.S. Code Section 1204, International Critical Child Abduction Act, makes it a felony to attempt to remove a child from the U.S. So it's not just an abduction that's a crime. Attempted abduction is also a crime in the U.S. In Virginia, and I'm licensed to practice in Virginia, it is a felony as well. So state, local law enforcement, FBI, they have concurrent jurisdiction. And you can pursue that route and work with Interpol. I guess based on my experience at NICMAC and as a lawyer today, what I'll tell you is never give up, keep trying, and take advantage of all the resources out there. It is very important that you look at this as a joint effort, and you're working together with the State Department, with NICMAC, with the FBI, and with foreign attorneys in an attempt to secure the return of the children from those countries.
So we've got a few minutes left. I had a couple of questions based on what you all presented. So first, Carlos, you mentioned earlier that you've seen an improvement over the past 10 years in Mexico. Could you briefly share with us how you've seen that improvement happen and where you might see it going forward?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have different people working at the Mexican Central Authority, number one. I think they are training judges all around the country, number two, and that's very important. And number three, when a lawyer knows how to handle a restitution case, first thing, and I'm telling my clients, you have to talk directly to that judge and see if that judge knows how to handle, how to resolve a restitution case. I have several experience talking to judges, explaining how the Hague Convention works, how they have to perform their own job. Some judges is like, you are not gonna teach me how to do my job. I said, I'm not here to teach you. I'm just here to talk about restitution case, telling you that we have several years of experience handling these cases. And we can share ideas. I can give you resource. I can give you precedents from other cases. And I think those two things, Jeffrey, are very key in Mexico being better country complying with the Hague Convention. Training, education, better people working at the Mexican Central Authority, a lot better than in the past years, and better judges as well. So, did I answer?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, Mohammed, one of the things you mentioned is the challenges in Lebanon. You heard yesterday Patricia Appy, the attorney that was testifying, pushing for Lebanon to become a Hague signatory. You very clearly outlined some of the challenges. Do you see a way for some sort of memorandum of understanding to be achieved, given that you're dealing with civic law and, as I understood, two forms of religious law within Lebanon? Could you talk about that briefly?
Now we are talking about the relation between the USA and Lebanon. Well, they have a MOU between Lebanon and the United States of America, I guess since 11 years. I called the US Embassy before I come to here, and I asked them to take a copy, so they didn't give me this, and they told me that I should ask the Lebanese authority to take it. Yes, unfortunately, yes. And one of the ideas we try to make a think tank about it, as I hope, is to modify this MOU. We are not resolving the whole matter of abduction in the world, but we can modify this MOU between the USA and Lebanon to try a little bit help in this issue. So yes, they have a MOU, and we should go and modify it. It's a very good MOU, even that you have a conflict between the MOU and the religious court, but usually the judges respond to MOU, to international MOU, because the hierarchy of the laws in Lebanon, the international, or if you have two party, Lebanon and other country, they were respected more there than if you want to say ordinary law, because the hierarchy in Lebanon, constitution, first thing, is the most powerful, international convention or international MOU, later the third is the ordinary law, and the religious regulation, they are the third. So yes, it's a very good question. We have already a MOU between Lebanon and the United States of America. We should go further to modify it and to try to get benefit concerning the abduction, because she is not only about abduction. She is about criminal things and also civic things. We are thinking to change this MOU or to modify it to make it better for all the American and all the Lebanese. But yes, there is one.
So I learned something new every day. I was obviously ignorant to the fact that we have an MOU, but you've illustrated some of the challenges and problems with it. If I could just ask a brief follow-up, and I want to make time for Rami also for a question. Is the religious courts, are they a fundamental challenge in enforcing the MOU, or is there another factor in the civil aspect of law that makes it problematic to use the MOUs to return children quickly? And if you could keep it very brief.
Yes, very brief. For Lebanon, the religions has its own regulation. So, as I told you offline, APIS mentioned that the American government should sit with the Lebanese government. The Lebanese government can't do anything for this because they don't have the right or the power to impose for the religious court. So no, as I told you before, it will not make any changes unless if we figure out a way to talk with the leaders of the sects. And believe me, America, the United States of America, have a very good relation with the religious leaders, unless the Hezbollah. But with the others, the Sunnah, the Christian, the Druze, yeah, they are in a very good term, and I believe that the United States can make a conference between the U.S. government and the leaders of the religious sects, so they can resolve, but not the Lebanese government alone, no.
Thank you. So, Rami, one of the things you mentioned, which I guess there's a biker convention out there.
I think so.
One of the things you mentioned was under 18 U.S. Code 12, Section 1204, the International Kidnapping Crime Act. Many parents have sought out criminal charges and have been turned away either at an FBI level or the Department of Justice, AUSA level. And the statute is elegant. It's very simple. As you mentioned, just the attempt fits the criminal statute. What would you advise parents that are seeking charges but are being rebuffed just by making a call to the FBI? Do they need to reach out elsewhere? How do they try and achieve that objective of getting traction with the AUSA and the FBI in their case?
Well, first of all, one thing to remember is that you don't need a court order to actually approach law enforcement. Because if you're married, living together in Virginia, for example, you have equal rights to the child. And by one parent taking the child away from the other parent, that parent is violating the searching parent's custodial rights. And I like to use the term searching parent as opposed to left behind parent. I think searching parent is more powerful because you're searching and you do that until the very end. But going back to your question, you don't need a court order. It's very important to explain, to do the research. That's my advice. Do the research in advance, maybe speak with an attorney, prepare the case, especially the facts in the case, and then approach the FBI or local law enforcement. Because they might not be familiar with these cases. They might confuse them with custody disputes. At the federal level, you don't need a custody order. So you can approach the law enforcement without a custody order. At the state level, at least in Virginia, you need to have a custody order. If you decide to approach law enforcement without a custody order, I think you need to be super prepared to explain how this abduction occurred without you knowing, that the children were removed without your permission. Another step that you can take before approaching law enforcement is to go to court. If a client comes to me in Virginia and says, and I actually have a client right now, and it is a wrongful retention, not a wrongful removal, the other parent took the children to another country, a non-Hague country, and let the parent know that, hey, I'm not returning the children to you. That's wrongful retention, using the language of the Hague Convention. What I'm going to do is file an emergency motion. That's kidnapping. The wrongful retention is equivalent to a kidnapping. So I will file an emergency motion, tell the judge, I need an order right now, ex parte, because you have to serve the other person, but given the circumstances in an emergency, you get an ex parte order, and then you go to the FBI. And in that order, my advice, and you should speak with an attorney about that, to include specific language, directing law enforcement at the federal level, at the state level, to, for example, enter the child into NCIC, if that's what you want. Have the AUSA, I mean, you're gonna talk to your attorney about that because the AUSA, they have prosecutorial discretion and it's gonna depend on the facts in the case, but you can include language in the order that would make it clear to law enforcement that if they have the option to pursue criminal charges, they should. So my advice, do your research before approaching law enforcement. Talk to ISTAN, talk to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, talk to the State Department. I'm not talking about spending weeks or days. Just one day, do your research, and then approach law enforcement.
Thank you very much. I think we're actually at the end of time. Do you have a few moments in case there are any questions?
Sure.
Just want to check with you.
And I should quit because we have a virtual meeting with the State Department concerning the Ahmadi case.
Oh, okay.
So
Please.
sorry, I should leave now.
Okay. Well, big round of applause for Mohammed. He has to go for a meeting, a virtual meeting with the State Department. If you gentlemen don't mind. Thank you so much. Just in case some of our audience have questions. If we could keep your question very succinct and brief and on topic. I know there's some parents still here. Try not to describe too much in detail, but get right to the question if we could, please. I don't think we have a portable mic, so if you could just speak up. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Hi, Jason Sorger. Thank you both. Carlos, as you know, I know you very well. My question is really on the topic that you just, my child is abducted in Mexico, et cetera, and I'm having, I think I've been talking to a lot of parents here who are a little bit, and Carlos knows this as well, who are a little bit on the line of whether you go criminal or not. On the travel.gov website, and after talking to the Department of State, which refers you to the travel.gov, there's pros and cons, and there's a long list. And so I'm curious, and also having gone to the HCCH website, it also talks about those same pros and cons, i.e., that you may anger, or that the foreign country may act unfavorably should that national have criminal charges out for them in the country of their return. So I was curious about how far you go, because you could just, and this is just again ideating here, and this is actually another parent suggested it to me, which was opening up a criminal report. So at least you could use it in your ex parte orders, go to child services if you have orders that, you have sole custody, etc. And and maybe even go to the FBI, but not necessarily go to the AUSC or what have you, where it kind of can spiral out of control, if you will, if that's not necessarily, you don't want a bench warrant out for this person, given some of the downsides. I mean, who cares, given some of the downsides with your child, which is the most important thing in the foreign country. So curious what your thoughts are there, just to unpack it.
So I guess I'm going to answer your question, but my question is, do these pros and cons apply to every country or not, based on what you've read?
In other words, are they generic?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what I'm trying to say here, and I'm not going to comment on your case, but generally speaking, sometimes criminal charges are helpful, other times are not, and this is a decision I think that you need to make early on in the case. That's my advice, not later on in the case. I think when it comes to criminal charges, generally speaking, every case is different. I think it's more difficult to approach law enforcement later on in the case. One thing that the searching parent can do is to approach law enforcement, but make it clear that they want any charges filed. Just want the child entered, for example, into NCIC, in the event that the child returns to the U.S. Or if you want to you ask them to do an Interpol notice, a yellow notice for the child, in the event the child travels internationally to another country, and if there's a way to do it without, for example, alerting the taking parent. So that's something you can explore, and then since they have a case open, you can approach them 6 months down the road or a year down the road and say, now I want you to file criminal charges against the taking parent because I'm not getting anywhere in that country. The last thing I'll say, I had an incoming case from South Africa 3 weeks ago, and the judge told me, I don't care about criminal charges. They were just looking at habitual residence, home state, whether there was wrongful removal, wrongful retention. That's what they were looking at. So I guess it depends on the destination country, whether or not, yes, I'm aware that some judges will be reluctant to send a child back under the Hague Convention because they feel that, now the taking parent is going to have to go back and face consequences. Well, yeah, I mean, if you kidnap a child, you should face the consequences. And so, I'm sorry, I'm not trying not to answer your question, but generally speaking, I would say approach law enforcement, but you may have the option, and I think you do have the option to say, I don't want to press charges at this point, I just want to file a missing persons report with the agency, with the FBI, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I saw this hand first, so Tony, go ahead, keep it brief,
Yeah,
question very short.
brief. So, what about that law enforcement? Because law enforcement accepted my case and they tried to keep it going. But my problem was with prosecutors, and it's a voted-in position, so it's not like I can ask their boss to help me with my case.
I'm sorry, are you speaking about local prosecutors or
Federal, well, in my home state, they have the state prosecutor, go back. The police tried to prosecute my ex for kidnapping and for custodial interference. He got to the prosecutor, they denied prosecution because they said it's a federal matter. So then I also went to the FBI at the same time, the day that I saw my son was missing. And it got to the FBI, and they have a checklist of what I'm supposed to do. So you go to The Hague, do all this stuff that I already did years prior. And finally, they accepted my case, and then it took a couple more years, and it went, my FBI agent told me it went to the prosecutor.
Tony, can you get to the question, just in the interest of time, so we can.
Right,
give
so
Jay a
then
chance.
that prosecutor said they were unwilling to prosecute. I have full custody, I did everything for prevention, and I'm still stuck with not knowing where to go.
And so your question.
What do you do if prosecutors are unwilling to prosecute?
All right. Thank you. I'm not going to comment on your case, and I apologize because I can't do that. But I'll talk generally when prosecutors who have prosecutorial discretion not to prosecute certain cases, and that's going to depend on the facts in the case. What I would say though, and this is based on experience working on IPCA matters for over a decade, is that if you're not getting anywhere, generally speaking, not getting anywhere with the prosecutor, have your attorney approach the prosecutor, lawyer to lawyer, speaking about the statute, whether or not there has been a violation, and depending on the facts in the case. And in non-hate countries, it wouldn't hurt. I think it's very important to mention to the prosecutor that this is the only option. If you don't have a hate convention mechanism in place, like Saudi Arabia or Lebanon, filing criminal charges may be your only option to try to get your child back. It's very important. And so I think the answer to your question, generally speaking, is that having a lawyer approach the prosecutor, call the FBI agent, say, hey, I'd like to meet with the prosecutor. I'm going to show up with my lawyer, and listen, we're just going to have a conversation and explain the benefits of having these charges in place. Okay? Is that?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so Jay, you'll be the last question, Jay. General, please, because as you heard, it's not going to be specific, questions only, not comments, questions. Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
More related to the prosecution part of it.
Did you have a question that you'd like to ask?
No, it wasn't a question.
Oh, okay, we just want to reserve it for questions. All right, if there are no other questions, thank you very much. Carlos, Rami, thank you so much for giving your time today and your experience and expertise and answering a few questions today. Parents may want to speak to you off session if you're still around, if you're open to that. I think, Jay, maybe that's a good opportunity to talk to them. And thank you very much. I think we got some refreshments outside. The closing session is at 4 p.m. So you've got a little bit of a break, an hour. You can go take a nap, take a shower, whatever you need to do, change into your sweats, get back into COVID clothing. And we'll see you at 4 o'clock or milling about in between. Thank you.